Hello, my friends. This is your host, Delia Perry, and welcome to another episode of the Girls for Greatness podcast. It is so wonderful to be coming at you today with another episode number 168, in fact. And today I am being joined by the amazing Kelli Moore. And my friends, I have the sense that this is going to be one of those powerful, meaningful episodes that you're going to definitely want to go back and listen to. Kelli is not only here to share her own inspiring story of what she has had to overcome in her own life in order to become the beautiful influencer she is today, but she's also here to share her wisdom with us. But before we dive into all of that, I just want to tell you a little bit about Kelli. Kelli worked for years in a male-dominated sports television industry, only to deal with 5 years of chronic. Did I say that right? Is it 5 or is it 15? Now I have
15.
15. I'm
Yeah,
sorry. 15.
that's okay.
That's much more. 15 years of chronic illness and finally reach her breaking point. Today, Kelli is the CEO and co-founder of Soulfire Productions and the co-host of the top-rated relationships podcast, Okay Babe. Today, Kelli pours her heart and soul into helping women set themselves free from expectations and the stories that hold them hostage in their own lives. Kelli asks us all to seek deeper within and to become the version of ourselves we've kept buried for so long. And if you are ready, my friends, to be challenged, think outside the box and finally see yourself clearly, then stick around. Kelli is here today to have a radically honest conversation to empower all of us to start showing up more authentically. I'm so excited to have you here, Kelli. Thank you so much for taking the
Oh,
time.
thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here too.
Yes. Well, I do want to dive into some of those things I mentioned. But tell us just maybe a little bit about you right now, where you're coming at us from and what's going on in your life, because it's pretty
Yeah,
exciting.
my legs are crossed trying to keep a baby inside.
My gosh.
Real talk. Yeah, no, I'm very pregnant and entering a very new season of life. It's so funny. I guess it's not funny, but I'm sure any of your listeners who have had children can relate to this. I was in the bath last night just trying to calm down some of the cramping, and I was crying because I felt like shit. I'm about to go
Mm-hmm.
through another death and
Mm-hmm.
rebirth cycle. Like I can feel myself dying right now. And it's so interesting because I've done this before. And I think anyone who does the work or is introspective or, does any personal development sort of has those moments where
Right.
something has to die for a new version of us to be born. And what I'm realizing is that not only am I giving birth to a child, but I'm giving birth to myself again and a new
Mm.
version of me. And there's the unknown of what does that look like and who will I be after this? And it's exciting, but it's also scary because I think we get sort of comfortable in who we are and what we're doing. And I've gotten to that place where I'm like, wow, my relationship with my husband is so good and we're so happy and we're a year into marriage and things are sort of flowing and the
Right.
business is great. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, let's just throw this wrench in there and have like, a dying of your soul and then a rebirth and then also add a child in. And so that's kind of where I am right now.
Oh my gosh. Well, I can definitely, like you said, anybody that's gone through that whole process can relate. And I like how you described that even, dying and rebirth. I mean, it's true, right? I mean, yes, all the feelings. I get it. So I know I alluded to this in the intro when I read through all of the amazing things that you've accomplished, but I'm wondering if you would just take us back to kind of, I guess, just the point where, you were in your career in television, doing what you're doing, and obviously, and then you said dealing with 15, not 5 years of chronic illness. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
But I mean, I just obviously that was a really, really difficult moment, a really difficult time in your life that you kind of then, I think, were probably faced with the crossroads of what am I going to do? What am I going to shift? What am I going to change? And so maybe just take us back there and kind of where you were at and what your thought process was in that.
Yeah. I mean, being sick for that long was really hard for sure. And I also don't regret any of it because I think I learned a lot. And I got sick at 19. I was captain of the volleyball team at USC. I was one of the
Mm,
best players in the country. I was in the best shape of my life. And then literally the next morning woke up and couldn't stand up straight. My leg was dragging. I couldn't see straight. I was in pain from head to toe. And they were like, we don't know what to do with you. And so that was really the beginning of this long journey for me of coming back to myself and learning how to listen to my body and the red flags and really understand the mind body connection.
Mm.
All the while being on live television and working for
Yeah.
ESPN and Pac-12 network and, doing red carpets for E and traveling all over the country every week. And, the last couple jobs I had were with the Dodgers and the Lakers, and they were very much big girl jobs with big paychecks and a lot of pressure and attention. And I was doing all the quote unquote right things to sort of climb the ladder and had big aspirations for what I wanted my life to be, my career to be, the paychecks to be. But I also felt like I was living this double life because not only was I sick, but I was also working in a very toxic culture and dealing with sexual assault and really not understanding my value and worth as a 20-something-year-old woman. And so I would go and work at the stadium or in the studio, and I would be this bubbly, cute girl in a short skirt, and everyone wants to talk to me and put on this show in front of millions of people. And then I would go home and I would just want to die. And I hated myself. I didn't like my body. I didn't like my life. I was like, why am I doing this? I don't even fucking like sports. So it was like, it was this whole thing. And I think I finally, between my body constantly shutting down and needing to take breaks and just feeling like literally like I was dying on the inside, and then dealing with sexual assault, I came to this moment where I remember looking at myself in the mirror and I didn't recognize myself. And I just kept thinking, how did I get here? What happened? And I realized there was so much people pleasing in me. And I was raised by a very narcissistic, manipulative mom. And there was so much codependence and so much need to make her proud. And I lived for other people's validation. And so when I started to see those things and I started to unravel the way I had gotten here, you can't go back. Like I saw too much. And so I burnt it all to the ground. I went public with my assault. I left my career and I just said, I'm starting over. And I don't even know what that means because I literally only have one skill, and it's hosting shows and interviewing people, or, folding clothes at Lululemon. That was my only other job. So I was like, what do I do with this? And so I spent about 6 months and I just, thought about what is it that really lights me up and what do I want to do with my life? And podcasting seemed to be like a great answer because not only did it help me heal from my health in my health journey and gave me access to other resources and alternative medicine, but it also was a place where I could use my skills and interview people and have really deep conversations while also transitioning out of sports and a male dominated situation into creating sisterhood and community and supporting women. And that was really important to me. And so that's literally what I've done for the last 5 years is transitioned into community, supporting women, helping grow people's platforms. We do that with our production company, Soulfire now, of how can we have really honest, transparent conversations, help women feel supported and empowered and know that they have a team behind them for everything that they do, and also feel really safe in what you create. So yeah, it's been really interesting.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Did you feel like your health then improved once you made those shifts in what you were doing? I mean, was that like the source of it? Do you think it was just like the years of stress? And I mean, from being a collegiate athlete, which I can relate to which is a stress in and of itself, to then going right into another whole nother, I can imagine, stressful, toxic environment as you described it.
Yeah, I think most chronic illness is always linked back to some sort of toxic experience that you've had, whether you want to call it trauma or the way you were raised or whatever that is. And I think I just had sort of layered a lot of that on top of each other without ever acknowledging it. And I think my body was speaking to me far before I got that sick. But I think I'm the kind of person, and I think many of us are, especially if you're a type A high achiever like I am, is you have to get hit by a truck in order to take a look at what's going on. And that's what happened to me. I had to be taken off scholarship, not allowed to play the one thing that I loved and play my sport, and bedridden, so that I could finally look at my life and say, what is going on? And then it still took many, many years after that of people pleasing, of my relationship with my mom sort of blowing up, of, me taking a look at what was actually going on and being honest with myself. I think I lied to myself for my whole life. I was really good at that. And I think that once I found the right doctors, that was really the catalyst for me actually getting to the root of what was going on. But my functional medicine doctor, who helped me heal in a year and a half, the first thing he said to me was, you need to get out of this job. This is so bad for you. This is so toxic. And this is part of why you're sick. And he started to help me put the pieces together. And then when I started getting into more personal development and plant medicine, I just started to see where I had justified a lot of things happening in my life because of a paycheck and because of attention. And I realized that I couldn't do that. So 15 years of illness, healed in a year and a half, have never had a symptom since. And all in that time, leaving everything behind and starting over.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's truly amazing. I think, you know, you bring up such a great point too, Kelli, with the whole idea of, you know, just like you said, like getting honest with yourself. And I could so relate to what you're saying about the type A people pleaser, because that has always been the way I've been. And you're absolutely right. I mean, it's so hard. It's been so hard for me to learn those lessons of pause and, you know, slowing down enough to look inward, because, you know, it's counterintuitive to my whole nature to just, you know, be and not do. So, I mean, I think just that whole concept though, that you were talking about, the radical honesty and just how that whole process, like, where did you begin? Like, where did you start? I mean, obviously you left your job, you know, took those 6 months to kind of get clear on maybe what was important to you, what you wanted to do. I'm curious, like, what that journey was like for you and just what the whole process was. I know it was long. I know it's a lot.
still going,
it's
right?
Still going. I know.
For life. No, it was really uncomfortable, especially in the beginning, because I had never been someone who could sit in quiet and be with my own thoughts and really be able to discern what is my thought and what is something that is coming in from the outside. And I was so driven by other people's opinions and beliefs and desires. And I didn't even realize until really after my mom died a couple of years ago that I had been working in television because that was her dream career. I worked with all of her heroes. And you know, I realized that I had allowed all of this external noise to be my driving force my entire life, and I didn't even realize it. And so for me, the process was really taking a step back and saying, what is mine and what is someone else's? And learning to discern my own voice from other people's. And that is really difficult when you don't even know how to do that. But I would just start by having awareness around how I would react to a situation, or how I would, you know, if I had a certain pattern or belief around something, I just started asking myself, is that what I believe? Or is that what I've been taught to believe? Or is this my response? Or is this a response passed down to me? And what I started to notice is that very often it was someone else, and I didn't even resonate with it. And I didn't know where it came from. It was just sort of happening. I felt like I was just a puppet. And so once I started making those realizations, I started to lean into, okay, so what does it feel like when I make a choice of how to respond in a different way? Well, it's a lot different because I have to be conscious about it. So I have to pause before I respond. So for example, this might be like weird for people, so I'll just give an example. So say my husband does something and it triggers a response in me, or it really pisses me off. My old response would be to immediately react and get mad at him or yell at him or be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Right? That's how my mom responded. So that's my mom's response coming through me. So now what I do is I pause and I ask myself, why are you triggered right now? Sometimes it's because something happened when I was 7 years old, and him just saying whatever he said upset me, and it has literally nothing to do with him, but it's just bringing up this old feeling. And so sometimes I'll say, hey, I'm having this really weird experience right now. I feel like I'm like this younger version of myself. And I remember when my dad did this thing and it made me feel a certain way. And what you just did made me relive that. And it was really shitty. And so I'm just in conversation with him about it. And then that allows me to acknowledge it and move through it. And it it kind of reteaches you what pattern you're going into. Am I going into a pattern of little kid responding, or am I going into adult version of me realizing and acknowledging that something happened when I was little, but now I have the power to respond in a different way. I'm in choice right now. So I did that with literally everything. And I still do that. And it's exhausting sometimes. But I have repatterned so many things for myself. And I also would turn to my journal and do the same thing. I would write down how I was feeling. I would just let it all pour out. And then I would look at all of it and I would say, where does this come from? Where are my unmet needs? Where am I not taking care of myself? Where am I acknowledging that my parents were emotionally unavailable when I was little? And now that's showing up in this way. So I think for me, it was just radical honesty and pausing in the moment and asking the question, where is this coming from?
So true. So true. I love that. And that's such a great piece of advice, I think, to all of us to do that. Super hard to do. And I had heard something similar. I can't remember right now on another podcast, but it just, what you said just reiterated in my mind, how necessary that is. How, in fact, I was explaining this to a friend, I think the other day, like our triggers, so many times it has nothing to do with the person in front of us or the situation. It's something else, like you said, it could be from your past, but it could also be, like you just said, an unmet need, or you're depleted in some area and it comes out then, or you're feeling the way you feel because something else has pissed you off, and it may had nothing to do with that. Maybe it's something that you didn't do for yourself, or, whatever, before 5 hours before that, or whatever it is. I just think it's so wise and so hard, but so wise and so needed. I mean, I think if we're going to actually, have the relationships we want to have with the people around us, with our loved ones, with, our spouses, with our significant other, whatever, instead of, constantly just reacting.
Yeah. And I think the issue here is that most people don't want to take responsibility and be able to do that.
Exactly.
It's so much easier to say, well, my mom did this, or my mom said that.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, for me, my mom is dead. So I could totally keep blaming her, but she literally is not here anymore. Right. And so what good does that do me? Like, how am I supposed to grow? How am I supposed to have the life that I want, the joy that I want, the healthy relationships I want with myself and other people, when I'm like, well, but my mom? And it's like, at some point, you guys, we have to realize, like, we're adults and we're in choice, and we get to renegotiate what the patterns are, what the stories are, and we can start from scratch if we want to. But it takes work, and it takes a willingness to look at the shadow side, go into the dark places, feel uncomfortable, be honest with ourselves. And how many of us are taught how to do that, or what that even means? And so we just end up continuing and perpetuating the cycle that's not even ours, but we kind of create a victim mentality within our own lives. Like, I'm not going to be a victim to my mom anymore. She doesn't even live. Like, I'm going to take that power back and say, Mom, you did your best. You sort of fucked up in, like, a lot of ways because you didn't deal with your own shit. But now I have the resources and the ability to make new choices and repattern that, so that moving forward, my kids don't have to have your responses to things because you were abused and didn't have the ability to work through it or chose not to.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. And I don't know about you, but I feel like, at least, the older I get, the more I think I'm realizing just how important it is to cut through my own bullshit to really reach a place where I am truly happy, truly joyful, all of it. Because I think we have these illusions sometimes of what is, really going to make us happy, or what do we really want? But it's not really us or who we are deep at our core. It's all the other things. Maybe it's someone else or something else that we're being influenced by. So,
yeah, I agree. And I think that's where you get to rewrite your definitions of everything. To me, success and happiness in my early 20s looked like being really skinny with an eating disorder and getting validation from people and having a really big paycheck that let me have a Mercedes and a Louis Vuitton bag.
Yeah.
That's what I cared about. And now I'm like, happiness to me is reading a book at 5 a.m. with my puppy on my lap, drinking my coffee, overlooking the mountains. I'm like, who the fuck did I become?
Right. It's so true. That's so true. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. Getting really real with yourself. Tell us a little about how you came to start Soulfire and your podcast.
Yeah. So, like I was saying earlier, I didn't really have, any background or
Yeah.
resume to my name other than television. And so I just kept thinking, what do I do with this? And I knew that I wanted to have really deep, thoughtful conversations with women. And I wanted to have resources so that they were aware that there were other types of ways of healing than just standard Western medicine, because I had been failed by that system
Yeah.
for 15 years, misdiagnosed, given a bunch of drugs, almost killed myself, was hallucinating. It was just a really dark time. And I just thought, well, I didn't even realize that a lot of these things were possible. And I live in LA and I have money and I can pay to see good doctors. And I still didn't even know that this was a thing. So, what do I do for the rest of the people in the country that don't have access the way I do? How can I empower them and give them more information? And so that's really where the podcast was birthed from. And then I also, because I had to start over and leave sports, I didn't really have any friends and I didn't have community and sisterhood. And so I wanted to utilize the podcast to create community and find more girlfriends and really connect with them. And I had a lot of, sisterhood wounds from childhood and being bullied. And then again in TV, older women, trying to get me fired and being jealous and angry. And I just thought I have to break these cycles. That's sort of been my thing for the last 5 years, is how can I break these cycles? How can I change and shift the paradigm for myself and for other people? Because again, I think it's our lack of awareness that things even exist or are possible. And so I just started having these conversations and it took off and it went so well and I loved it and I felt so full and I felt like, wow, I'm actually doing something that matters and I'm impacting people. And you host a show, like the DMs you get, the reviews you get. I'm like, oh, someone else is listening. I'm not just talking to myself. And it actually felt like it mattered. When I was talking about home runs, it was the comments I got were, oh, wow, you have great legs. I'm like, cool, I'm really impacting the world, And so I finally felt like I had value and worth in a really deep way that had nothing to do with the way I looked or, whatever. And so as I started to fall more and more in love with it, I met my now husband, Connor, and I was working with a production company and I really didn't like my experience. I thought that there was just a lot of things missing. And I started to learn more about the podcast industry itself. And it was it just lacked a lot of transparency and support and community. And I just noticed that everyone felt like they were sort of on an island. There wasn't an attention to detail. There wasn't strategy. There wasn't, someone holding your vision with you or co-creating. It was like a transaction of money. Here's your podcast, go on your merry way. And I just thought there has to be a better way to do this. And so alongside our now COO, Sam, Connor and I created Soulfire, and the whole premise of the company is transparency and community. Not only are we editing everything for you and creating all of your content, doing videos, posting it to platforms, but we do strategy calls with all of our clients. We have a mastermind with all of our clients. We really impress upon everyone that the more we help each other, the better we do and the more we grow. And that's how it works. So we're constantly introducing people and pulling from other networks and how can we connect you? And hey, I think you should do a podcast about this. It would be such a good idea. And you're the person for it. And we really want our hosts to feel like they have a team and like they can push boundaries and have hard conversations and we have their back. And so it's been really special for me to take my production and interviewing skills and infuse it into a platform where we believe so much in every single one of our hosts and want them to, trickle that out into their communities and continue to be able to grow because of that mindset, not because of this scarcity mindset of, I'm not going to tell you anything because God forbid you do well in your life. I don't know.
Exactly. No, that's awesome. That is awesome. I love that. I love that. And then you also have your own show with your husband, right? Yes.
Yeah. So I had, my show has been on hiatus this year because we did IVF. So something had to give on my schedule. So that was the thing that gave. But I'll be bringing that back when I come back after having the baby. And then Connor and I have hosted Okay Babe for the last, 2.5 years.
That's awesome.
And
it's a great show. It's a great show.
It's fun. It's sex, love, relationships. We just talk about all of the interesting situations we get ourselves
Uh-huh.
in. We're not in a monogamous relationship. And I identify as bisexual. So there's a lot of things that we talk about and how we communicate through and how we really support each other to have, our sovereignty and individuality and growth, while also, maintaining a really supportive and loving relationship, and, bringing a baby into the world, and sort of being the normal heterosexual married couple
Right.
that's having kids, but also has this whole other aspect to our relationship. So we talk about all those things.
That's cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love it. I love the transparency part. I love that. I mean, I
Yeah.
think that's great. And I think you've created a great platform just with that show. From what I've seen, that it's just a refreshing to see something that's open and honest. It's bringing to light things that I think people would be like, oh my gosh, I can't talk about that, or I don't want to talk about that, or what is, so I think it's awesome. I think that's
Thank
great.
you. Thank you.
Yes, love that. So I'm gonna, so many other things we could talk about, but I'm gonna kind of wrap up with a couple of questions that I know you'll shed some light on some of these things too. But my first one is tell me 3 words that best describe who you really and truly are.
Hmm. I think loyal, caring, and grounded.
Great words. Great
Thank
words.
you.
Next question. Tell me one thing that you are currently working on to improve in your own life.
Ooh, regulating my emotions.
Mm,
Yeah, it's hard to do on a normal day. It's extra hard to do when you're
yeah,
dealing
when
with
you're pregnant.
pregnancy
Yes.
hormones.
Yeah, you think?
Yeah. So I'm really working on I have this like really deep need because of my codependency with my mom to be saved.
Mm,
And I'm working on not only regulating my emotions but saving myself. Those sort of
mm.
go hand in hand for me. So it's a work in progress. I've definitely improved over the last couple months, but man, is it hard.
That is hard. That is hard. So you're talking like well, I guess explain what you mean by regulating emotions. I want to make sure people understand that.
Yeah. So like oftentimes throughout this pregnancy process, especially, I have felt really out of body and out of control. And I sort of get very ungrounded and I feel like I'm floating and I'm like up and out, up and out, up and out. And I just
Mm,
feel,
mm,
really uncomfortable.
mm-hmm,
And I'm like, my immediate reaction is to run to Connor and freak out. And oftentimes I start projecting a lot of stuff onto him. And the whole experience has nothing to do with him, but it's like all my fears and insecurities start coming out. And I'm like, something is wrong. Oh my God, I need you. And I'm just putting all this stuff on him. And he's like, I don't even understand what you're talking about right now. Because oftentimes it doesn't make sense.
mm-hmm,
It's not
mm-hmm.
logical. It's just a bunch of emotions that are coming up at
Sure.
once that are triggered by something. And so what I've been working on is
Mm-hmm,
pausing. And I'm asking myself, what's going on right now? And I remind myself that I'm safe and
mm,
that this is a thing that happens sometimes where whether it's hormones or I'm just triggered and
yeah.
emotional, that sometimes things feel chaotic and I feel out of balance and ungrounded. And then I ask myself, what do you need right now?
Mm,
And usually will go take a bath or I'll just go lay down and listen to some music and just come back within myself, remind myself that I'm safe. And that usually will bring me back to center. And so in that way, I save myself. And so it's a repatterning of I don't need someone to save me. I can save myself. And the other thing that I'll do is speak forward what's happening. So instead of going to
mm,
Connor and yelling at him and saying, whatever, you didn't pick up your clothes and blah, 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 that has nothing to do with what's happening.
right.
I go to him and I say, I'm feeling really uncomfortable and out of my body right now. And I really don't like it. And I am on the verge of sort of having an emotional breakdown. And I would really appreciate if you could just hug me and hold me for a minute. And that would be really helpful for me. And so he'll do that and he'll, hold me while I cry and just listen to me, not try and fix it. And when that happens, I move through it so quickly because sometimes
Mm,
I'm very a physical person, like touch. And so being held sort of brings me back into my own body.
yeah.
And then I feel safe because I obviously trust my husband and he holds that space for me. And then I can just move through it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really great advice. Really
Thank
great
you.
advice. Um, and my last question, tell me one thing that you are currently proud of yourself for being or doing.
I'm really proud of myself for growing a human.
Yes, you should be.
I don't feel like I acknowledge that enough, so I'm
No,
going to say
you
that.
should, right? Because it's a miracle and an amazement, an
Yes.
amazing thing in and of itself. I totally agree. Well,
Thank
Kelli,
you.
thank you so much. This has been so wonderful. I've truly, truly loved just what you've talked about with the whole power of pause and just being, all of us understanding more how we can be more authentic and honest with ourselves. And just everything you're doing, I think is just amazing. I love what you're doing in the world and just really, really appreciate you taking the time, especially at this stage in your life. So excited to see, how this all turns out for you, but I'm sure, you guys are going to be amazing parents and this child's going to be so blessed. So
Oh,
amazing. So
thank you so
yes,
much.
you bet. You bet. Thank you so much again for your time. I truly appreciate it.
Thank you, Delia.